Okay, so you've got young people starting here today, as you did all those years ago after graduating. What's the message you send to them? Or lawyers starting, someone starting with you this week, this month, what's the message that you give to them as part of your team?
Commitment. A lot of people study law for the purpose of not practicing, going to other areas.
Yes.
So be it. But if you're going to decide to actually practice as a lawyer, commit. Commit to be the best lawyer that you can be. Understand what your role is. And it's an ancient role. It really is. The idea of having someone stand in your place to assist, to advise, or to speak on your behalf is an ancient role and one that should be respected. And I think that if you understand what your role is and you commit to that to be the best lawyer that you can be, everything else flows. Now, people think, I think there's an assumption that lawyers do very well financially. There's a lot of material benefits in becoming a lawyer. That may or may not be correct. Putting that aside, if you focus on that, you've missed the point. The point is to do the best job that you can be the best lawyer that you can be, and all of those material rewards, they will flow.
You see, it mightn't be politically correct in 2025 to say this, but as someone who started at the very bottom of the ladder myself and got to where I eventually got before I retired, one of the things I'd say to young people coming into it, don't watch the clock. In sport, most of it happens on Saturday and Sunday, so be prepared to work every weekend. But my knowledge of your type of business is that the ones that succeed are pretty much the ones that succeed in every avenue. They get early, they go late, and they go flat out when they're here.
Look, I agree, Ray. People have to understand this is a profession, a commitment. We are not 9 to 5ers, there's no doubt about that. Our clients need us outside of hours, maybe weekends or after hours, whatever the case might be. You need to respond to it. The best I ever did as a young solicitor was a 4 a.m. start until a midnight finish. No client, no qualm, no complaints, no anything. Just went home and just got the good night's sleep and then headed back the next day. But that's what the demands of the job are, and they have to understand that. You hear stories about young interns in hospitals doing 80-hour weeks, or for example, it's part of the training. Long hours, for example, for a young solicitor to learn their craft and be available to clients, part of the job.
Now, a successful business, but of course, there's also ethics involved. And I guess while you're trying to juggle being a successful business, you've got to also be ethical to your staff and your clients as well.
No compromise there whatsoever. The thing that distinguishes the legal profession to many other professions, I think, is the imposition of the ethical and professional responsibilities that no other profession is charged with or has a responsibility for. And I don't think that's bad. I think that's a very good thing. So a compromise of ethics can never be explained away, can never be forgiven, can never be excused. So I've had solicitors over the years make mistakes. There's no doubt about that. But perhaps I've ever made one or two myself.
Please, no.
I'm not sure.
No,
I can't remember any, but maybe I have. But at the end of the day, mistakes can be excused. A breach of ethics can never be excused. Dishonesty, deceit, there is no place for it in our profession. So when young solicitors come to me, for example, and there may be a conflict of interest argument, for example, or whatever the case might be, a question of some ethical approach to a particular problem, I always tell them to stop, pause for a moment and think about it carefully, because invariably there is a solution. And it is always to maintain the client's best interest paramount, for example, do the right thing, be completely transparent, open and honest.
Okay. It's evolving. The world's evolving. We live in a different world than when you started and when I started. Now, in terms of that evolution, how does a law firm, which is historically, it's been here forever, law firms have been doing this job, as you've mentioned, but how do they evolve to be in the modern world?
Well, two elements of that. Of course, the law is ever evolving and challenging. So our solicitors have to do a certain number of hours per year by way of continuing mandatory education. That's fine, that's easy. But the main challenge has been IT, information and technology, of course, which has imposed itself on the profession. Now, all these files are paperless. All our, if you can walk around this office now, you won't see a file anywhere. Now, for me, it's really difficult to understand that because I think the solicitors in there doing no work. I mean, where are all the files? The files are on the computer. My office back in the day was so full of files you couldn't actually get in, and I knew that I was busy. So it's a bit different now. All of the filing with the courts now is online. You just lodge documents online, you serve documents online. So it's very different. The biggest challenge moving forward, of course, is going to be AI. And I think the concern is so real, so genuine, that in fact recently the Chief Justice issued a practice note about the use of AI in the compilation of experts' reports and other legal documents.
Mm.
Can it be fully trusted at the moment? Perhaps not.
Well, I think one of your fellow legal people got into trouble over using AI in a case, and it was
That's
pointed
right.
out to them that it wouldn't happen again.
No, the document in fact contained references which weren't genuine.
Yes.
And unless you double check yourself to confirm the authenticity, this is what's going to happen. I think there is a place for AI. Whether or not it's in the legal profession at the moment, I'm not so certain.
What keeps you motivated and fulfilled away from writing? So now, because I started my career as a rugby league caller and still have an interest in it, obviously that's a passion of yours.
Very much so, yeah, absolutely. The genesis of which was meeting Steve Lavers on the Central Coast back in the day. He lived in Murray Street. We had the shop on Ocean View Road, and he would pop into the shop on Sunday afternoons. And once you meet a real life rugby league player, that's it, you're taken for life. And that passion continues to this day. Huge West Tigers supporter and will remain, but just love the game. I mean, the weekend, for example, that just passed, the quality of games on the weekend was just ridiculous, second to none. Just keeps getting better and better.
Yes.
So that's an interest.
You know what I think is the most wonderful innovation? When I started calling football in 1987, the corner post was in touch.
Yes.
So if the ball or the player in possession touched the corner post, you were deemed to be touching goal. Now, my late dear friend and colleague, Bob Fulton, one of the most astute league brains there is, pushed and pushed and pushed the hierarchy to say, no, corner post can't be part of the procedure. If a player is able to, in some form of acrobatic superiority, get the ball down while touching the corner post. And I think in the last years, I've seen the most spectacular tries we've ever seen since 1908 because the corner post no longer touches the goal.
There's a direct chain of causation link between that and what you're seeing today. I agree with that. There's no doubt about that.
I think it's just one of the best rule changes of all time.
Yeah. Are you a fan of the Six again?
No, I hate
I get it.
Particularly if I've tipped a team and they're defending grimly for 3 sets, 18 tackles on their own line, and some bloke just happens to be out of the play but in front of the referee, and then that arm goes in the air. So why are you starting on the 6 again?
I know that you've raised it previously. I thought I'd just poke the bear.
No. Now, over the years, and I guess we have to be careful about privacy matters, but is there any case or case that stands out as the most rewarding or memorable that you've been involved in?
There's two.
Right.
First one is there was a woman brought in her son in a wheelchair and the child was severely disabled. And their complaint was that they had attended a hospital and the child had a continuing monitoring by the specialists at the hospital where a nurse would each month inject a particular medication to treat his condition. And on this occasion, they had unfortunately increased the dosage inadvertently, and there was a very, very significant and nasty reaction to it. The child was in intensive care for 3 or 4 days, but had recovered back to the condition that he was in previously. And they were interested as to whether or not there was a claim as against the hospital because of the negligence of the nurse, and there clearly was. But during the course of the consult, I asked the mother as to why the child was in a wheelchair, what had happened. And she told me a story as to them being on their property. The neighbour on the adjacent property was having a barbecue, invited them over. He got the little quad bikes out. He put all the kids, loaded the kids all up on the quad bike, some in his lap, some behind, some in front, and he tore off on the property, hit a bump, threw this child off the quad bike and suffered the injury. And I asked the mother, have you done anything about that? And she said, well, we didn't think we could. Well, we brought proceedings against the neighbour, indemnified by his insurer, of course, public insurer, $15 million. What that did for the family, modified the home, modified the vehicle, provided the best possible care for that child.
Almost by accident.
Exactly. And so there was another instance where we were presenting to a special needs school, and on conclusion of the presentation, a mother came up to me and says, could I have a quiet word? And she said, I gave birth 6 or 7 years ago. She says, my child suffered a very significant disability at birth. She says, I've always felt that something went wrong that could have been avoided, but I've never asked the question. And I said, look, we'd be more than happy to ask. And we made the appropriate inquiries, and sure enough, there was a claim, and that settled for $12 million. And I know these are very large sums of money, but what they did for the family in terms of modifying the house, providing for special care 24 hours a day, modifying the car so they could get the wheelchair in and out of the vehicle without the mother having to lift the child in the wheelchair, etc. They're the cases that you remember.
You aren't talking about over a lifetime.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a big number. Both numbers are big, but over a lifetime.
Absolutely. And when the parents do eventually pass, well, that money's going to go to pay carers, full-time carers.
One of the reasons I'm happy to be your ambassador is because of Bryden's support of community initiatives.
Yep.
We've got a golf day coming up in November, which is going to support something near and dear to both of us, the Leukemia Foundation. Why, in these days of 100 miles an hour, there's a social conscience of your company say we've got to do other things apart from help people in a legal sense?
I think it stems from a sense of responsibility as a member of the community, like the corporate responsibility that we have to give back to the community in which we have partaken and been very successful for a very long time. We are very privileged in what we do. We've been very fortunate. We act for people far less, or the cases that we hear daily, the things that people have to endure in their lives. I've had personal experience with leukemia, as you as well. When you see the work that these people do and you see what people have gone through, if you are not moved by that to the point where you want to give back, just as a little aside, a friend of mine reached out only recently about a food initiative through the Cogra Greek Orthodox Church. They feed the homeless 500 meals a week they provide in their local community. So we're sponsoring their fundraising night coming up at the end of May. It's not a lot of money for me, but it is for them, and it will have far-reaching effects. So I think, Ray, just doing good for the sake of doing good is the right thing to do if you are able to.
Now, our association goes back to Ian's days at Bryden's when I was on radio, and then you are also active in all sorts of sponsorships, be it professional sponsorship with the media or with rugby league or various things you do. Those partnerships, like the one you're doing for feeding the homeless and things like that, I guess that to a certain extent reflects the values of your firm, but reflects the values of a migrant child making hamburgers and steak sandwiches and fish and chips at Elon.
Very much so. I mean, some of the life lessons that you learn from that remain with you. Particularly customer service, for example, commitment to family, and trying to get ahead in life. My parents ran this takeaway bar 7 days a week. I was fortunate enough to be schooled at Knox Grammar School towards the end of my high school. It was a phenomenal experience. But my father had to cook a lot of hamburgers and sell a lot of barbecue chickens to pay for Knox Grammar School, and he was happy to do that. And so I'm eternally grateful. Those lessons I've passed on to, hopefully, to my children, they'll pass on to theirs. But you're right, that sense of community, that sense of giving, that sense of commitment stems back from the days of working in a shop, knowing the value of work, the real value of work.
You see, that's a real story of what our country is all about. You've got a father prepared to work 7 days a week, probably 16 hours a day, frying up fish and chips, cooking burgers to give his son the chance of an outstanding education.
Absolutely.
Incredible.
No, I agree. And the sort of, as I say, could not be more grateful. And the sort of thing that it's difficult to explain because you expect it. Because without recourse to any sort of expectation of expressions of gratitude or appreciation, I do it for my kids. I say to people that on the 9th of August 1994, when my eldest was born, my life changed in ways I could never have imagined. Everything I've done after that date has been for the kids, been for the family. I mean, I don't need to be working. I've just turned 60 years of age. I could slow down. I could easily take 6 months off and spend the European summers over there and come back here. But it's not about that. It's about doing the best that you can and continuing to do that. When I was, I think it was 5 or 6, and we were old enough to reach the counter, we went to work. So as soon as we could reach the counter and serve, and my kids, when they started university as well, they were in here working as well. So that work ethic is passed on.
Unbelievable.